Ancient Roman punishments were pretty harsh, and in today's video we're going to look at one of the most bizarre punishments that was designed to strike fear into the hearts of criminals, while simultaneously being a spectacle for the public. Among the more brutal methods of capital punishment were the lesser-known devices like the lightning cage, a terrifying construct intended to combine fear, humiliation, and a painfully slow death. This metal contraption was designed to trap its victim, exposing them to the elements and the amusement of the crowd, while delivering a miserable end through the power of nature itself. The first thing to understand about this cage is what it wasn't. It wasn't just a regular old cage like what you might see in a zoo or even a prison. It was specifically designed to be a death sentence, a fact made clear by its placement and the way it was used. The lightning cage was constructed from iron bars, heavy enough to prevent anyone trapped inside from breaking out. The condemned person would be locked in with no way to escape until they met their end. Sometimes the cage would be placed in an open plaza or on top of a hill where it could be seen by many people. Other times it would be erected near the place of execution or even atop a tomb, adding insult to injury. In others, birds of prey or other wild animals would be released into the cage alongside its occupant, turning the final moments of their life into a fight for survival. The use of the lightning cage was not a common occurrence in ancient Rome. In fact, there are very few records of it ever being used. This adds to the mystery surrounding this form of capital punishment, making it all the more fascinating. However, there are a few instances where the use of the lightning cage has been recorded. One of the earliest references to the lightning cage can be found in a letter written by Pliny the Younger, a Roman statesman and natural philosopher, to his friend, Pliny the Elder, who was serving as the governor of Bithynia and Pontus in the early 2nd century. In the letter, Pliny the Younger describes how a man named Athenodorus had been condemned to death by the emperor Trajan and was sentenced to be locked up in an iron cage on a hilltop until either he died from the elements or lightning struck him. The cage was intended to be a symbol of the emperor's power and a warning to others who might consider challenging his authority. And as Pliny the Younger wrote to his friend, the spectacle of the dying man was meant to serve as an object lesson in humility. Another reference to the lightning cage can be found in a poem written by the Roman poet Martial in the late 1st century AD. Martial describes the fate of a charioteer named who had been sentenced to death for accidentally injuring the Emperor Nero. According to Martial, Craterus was locked in a cage and exposed to the sun and rain until he died. Again, the spectacle of the dying man was meant to be a warning to others. These are the only two instances where the use of the lightning cage can be found in the historical record, but it is likely that this form of capital punishment was used other times throughout the history of ancient Rome. What makes the lightning cage such a fascinating and terrifying form of capital punishment is the way in which it combined the physical and psychological aspects of torture. On the physical side, the cage itself was designed to be a restrictive and uncomfortable space. It would have been dark and dank, and the condemned person would have been forced to spend their final hours in their own waste. If the cage was left open, they would also have been exposed to the elements, meaning that they would have had to deal with the heat of the sun, the cold of the night, and the rain or snow. If wild animals were released into the cage, they would have added another layer of physical torture, as the condemned person would have had to fight to survive. But the physical torture was only one part of the equation. The other part was the psychological torture that came with being on display for the public to see. The condemned person would have known that they were being watched and that their every move was being scrutinized. They would have been humiliated and degraded, and this would have added to their overall suffering. Additionally, the fact that the lightning cage was often placed in a public area meant that the condemned person's family and friends may have been among those watching them die. This would have added another level of emotional pain to the experience, as the condemned person would have known that their loved ones were seeing them at their most vulnerable moment. So why did the Romans use this particular method of capital punishment? What was it about the lightning cage that made it so effective as a means of retribution and deterrence? One reason for the use of the lightning cage may have been the effectiveness of its cruelty. By combining physical and psychological torture, the Romans were able to create a form of capital punishment that was both painful and humiliating. This would have served as a warning to others who might consider breaking the law, as they would have seen what happened to those who did. Another reason for the use of the lightning cage may have been the spectacle that accompanied it. As we've already discussed, the condemned person would have been on display for all to see, and this would have drawn a crowd. This would have served to humiliate the condemned person even further, but it would have also served as a form of entertainment for the crowd. In ancient Rome, the crowd loved nothing more than a good show, and the lightning cage certainly provided that. Finally, the use of the lightning cage may have been a way for the Romans to assert their dominance over nature itself. By placing the condemned person in a cage that was designed to attract lightning, the Romans were essentially using the power of the gods themselves to punish the offender. This would have served to remind the crowd of the power of the state and the importance of obeying the law. The lightning cage is just one example of the many forms of capital punishment that were used in ancient Rome. Others included crucifixion, burning, and execution by sword. However, the The lightning cage was unique in the way that it combined physical and psychological torture, as well as the spectacle that accompanied it. While the use of the lightning cage is now confined to history books and academic studies, its legacy lives on in the stories that have been passed down through the ages. The story of Pliny the Younger and Pliny the Elder serves as a reminder of the lengths to which the Roman state would go in order to punish those who went against it. And the poem by Martial reminds us of the human cost of the cruelty that was inflicted in the name of justice. As we continue to explore the history of ancient Rome, it's important to remember that while the Romans accomplished many great things, they were also capable of great cruelty and injustice. The lightning cage is a reminder of that cruelty and a warning of what can happen when power goes unchecked. The lightning cage was a truly terrifying invention, one that combined the physical and psychological aspects of torture in a way that was both effective and cruel. It's no wonder that it was used by the Romans as a means of capital punishment, but thankfully, it's now just a relic of the past. Let us know your thoughts on this brutal Roman punishment. Do you think it was an effective form of retribution? How about as a warning to others? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, make sure to check out our other videos on ancient Rome, including life in the gladiator games, what it really took to become an emperor, and more. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.